Really, I think it's crystallised in Boris Johnson's own words, which are, we're not urging people to throw caution to the wind. What they're doing is removing the legal requirements, the framework that was put in place as a special reaction to the threat posed by the coronavirus. And when that was done, it was always made clear that when these were regarded as no longer necessary, those legal requirements would be removed. But in the same way that we urge people to be careful, be cautious, and to take steps not to spread diseases of any kind of colour, flavour and type around when we're infected with things. I mean, at the end of the day, if you've got gastroenteritis and norovirus, you generally don't go to work. You don't send your kid to nursery. There's no legal framework that says if you do, you're going to get prosecuted. That's what they're removing, the legal framework, but hopefully the learning, the common sense, the ability to make decisions and risk assess that we've actually become pretty good at doing over the course of the pandemic. That remains in play. People can still do that and should do that.
I wonder how much of an effect this will actually have then. We're hearing that infections are likely to rise as a result of this. That sort of makes sense. But I suppose a lot of people will choose to isolate anyway. A lot of employers will back that caution. And the kind of people that might go out coughing and spluttering anywhere might have been doing that anyway without much check. Do you think this is actually going to have a material impact on the number of infections?
Not really, no. I think there's a number of things to consider. One is that as we go into spring and then into summer, this is probably going to be a seasonal infection. The other coronaviruses that infect us humans cause seasonal surges in winter. They cause about 5% of the common colds that we get. This COVID virus, SARS-CoV-2, is probably going to join the ranks of those other 4 common coronaviruses and become another cause of a flu-like illness that probably will come in winter. So as we go into summer, levels are going to fall anyway, just like they have in the last 2 years. They've declined over the spring and into summer. Coughs and colds spread much less well in summer. So we're going to see these sorts of de-escalation steps superimposed on a falling backdrop of cases. So I think that will carry on. I don't think it will contribute massively to more cases at all, actually, because, as you say, the kinds of people that will comply with these kinds of things, the kinds of people that would have been being tested, establishing their status and so on, they're probably not the same kind of people that would profligately go out and knowingly spread infection around the workplace. I think those people are few and far between. Most people are very responsible, have been responsible. And look at Christmas. When we knew that the Omicron variant had appeared and we hadn't yet got the measure of it, the government were frank and said, this has appeared. We don't know exactly how serious it could be. It could be serious, but please evaluate your circumstances, make an appropriate risk judgment about what you do over Christmas. We will reevaluate after Christmas. People did change their behaviour accordingly. So I think this is really a nod towards the fact that people have learned a lot. They can be treated as grown-ups, and we've never done this for other respiratory infections like the flu. You had the quote there from Chris Whitty. The flu also poses a significant seasonal risk, not just this year, but every year, and has done for hundreds of years. People are trusted to make sensible choices, and hopefully they'll carry on doing so.
One final point in this discussion. Over the last week or so, we've had a bit of controversy over the surveillance mechanisms in this country, the random sampling that the ONS does to find how much COVID there is in the country. Everything from testing sewer systems to randomly knocking on people's doors and asking if they would like to have a test. That on top of free testing. Just how much of that infrastructure do you expect will be rolled back? We're hearing that some of it may be retained.
Well, we're spending billions on testing at the moment, but that's not necessarily strategic testing. The useful kind of strategic testing I'm referring to is in hospital and other places where infection control is vital. That kind of testing will remain. But mass screening of the British public, especially as the levels of virus start to dwindle, which they will. I mean, they're falling very fast now, and they will continue to do so. We don't need that level of protection because what we're effectively screening for is something with a risk profile on par with a common cold. And we don't have a screening program for the other common colds, so we don't need to treat this one any differently. But in terms of background surveillance, that does remain very, very important, and I don't think that's going to be switched off. The government of this country and other countries are continuously monitoring what the virus is doing. It enables us to track its changes. And this is not just specific to coronavirus. We've actually had a mechanism in place to do this on the scale of the entire world for the flu, for decades. And so laboratories like the one that I work in, during a flu season, will send in to a network of thousands of WHO laboratories around the world samples of the flu that we're diagnosing. And this enables those laboratories to keep tabs on what the flu is doing. I suspect that we'll be doing something very, very similar with this new coronavirus in the months to years ahead, so we can track it in exactly the same way as we do the flu, and therefore use that data to inform what goes into the vaccine, like we do with the flu. And in that way, we've got this effective giant radar screen for viruses, so we can see what the virus is doing, and we can make sure we keep step in terms of our protection and our defences with it.